All right, guys, we were back again. COVID Cabal, back again. What is up, people? If you are here, drop a like in the chat. If you are here, drop a like in the chat. I want to see who's showing up on this last minute Saturday COVID Cabal. We're getting spontaneous here, almost like the good old days. Almost like the good old days. But honestly, guys, I really feel like we got to treat this a little bit like the good old days because I don't know about you, but it feels like everything is coming full circle. So when we first started this in 2020, all of the energy potential that was happening then, and then we go through the darkness, right? The difficult period under Biden, and now it's like we're witnessing the sort of unfinished business, the completion of so much of what we even started this show talking about. Well, Seth, it's early Saturday for you guys, but it's evening over here. It's even evening over here in Europe. So I am partaking, and don't think badly. I mean, this is the same wine as before, so you can see I didn't even drink the rest of this. So we're just gonna have some of this 10% Italian Planck, because this is big stuff. Big stuff is going on, and I feel like we gotta stay on top of it. We got to stay on top of a lot of this stuff. It's historic. So with all that said, let's dive right into it. So just a little bit earlier today, I posted this. There was an insurrection on January 6th, but it wasn't coming from the people. It was coming from Congress and the deep state. Okay. So this is obviously like a controversial statement, but it's true. And, being on the ground that day, doing what I did, I can tell you that was in my mind. It was on the mind of everybody there that they are certifying a stolen election. They are certifying a stolen election. And so when you accuse the people who are against this of an insurrection, I mean, everything these people do is a complete and total projection and inversion. So if they say that you're doing something, they're doing it. Like, oh, Trump's trying to be a dictator and take over this country. That's what they're doing, right? So history will show that actually what the people were trying to do was prevent an insurrection from happening. But in this country today, or at least the country that they've been trying to create, the people are not allowed to have a voice. And Donald Trump is bringing that voice back to the people, or he's trying. So we're going to get into what Loki says here about the fake signatures and the executive orders, because all this stuff is very important. It's key to the whole thing, and it shows us where things are going. I don't want to belabor. I don't want some of this stuff I have to repeat just a little bit, at least every show, because I have to get into people's heads. If you're talking about the midterm elections, oh, it's we got to see what's going to happen for the midterms. And we that shit is don't even think about that stuff. First off, because it's not even close. Okay. The primaries are not even until a year from now, but you cannot possibly be thinking about the midterms right now or talking about how to deal with SCOTUS. Alan's saying it perfectly here, right? SCOTUS is gay. I don't give a fuck about SCOTUS. The public doesn't give a fuck about SCOTUS. SCOTUS does not constitutionally have the power that it's pertaining to have. And I've talked about this on other shows. I wrote about this in prison. But the anti-federalists talked about this. They said, there's no provision, judges don't have explicit power, but there's also no provision dropping them, stopping them from being able to say the things that they're saying. And the Federalists' response to the anti-federalists, this is all the time during the Bill of Rights talks, was basically who cares? Like the judges are not going to ever have any power. Congress has the purse. The executive has the sword. You don't have anything to worry about with the judicial branch. The judicial system for that matter. I think, what people are realizing here, and this is coming from my own experience in the judicial system, which is that there's zero justice in it. It is procedural bullshit. And I know some people are saying, well, actually, Supreme Court's doing Trump a favor because the Supreme Court is actually, they're saying that the lower courts have to give a certain amount of time. They have to explicitly say how much time that the executive. I don't give a shit about that. No one in the fucking country cares. No one cares about your fucking procedure. Okay? I want to make that clear. Procedure is retarded. It does not lead to justice. It obscures justice. Maybe at one point when it was very, very minor, it helped to keep an organized court, to keep some kind of standards. Now it is a labyrinth, okay? And I can tell you that the American people do not care about the pedantic legalese about whether or not how much notice a lower court needs to give the president, and the president has to wait until the lower court gives its opinion, and then the president can then have another oral argument with the Supreme Court so we can talk about it. No one gives a fuck about this. There are at least 20 million illegal people who came into this country that were put into this country. And if the legal system is incapable, the Supreme Court is incapable of getting their head out of their fucking ass at the situation, then they are irrelevant. That is where we are at as a country. You either defend the country or you do not defend the country. And if you are navel gazing, and I'm being actually fair to the court, because I'm saying that they are, they're just missing the forest for the trees. The reality is that, and everybody knows this, really, because why else would you do it? Everybody knows that what they're actually doing is attempting to sabotage the administration to stop them from doing this. And I didn't bring Cernovich's tweet here, right? But I retweeted it. He said perfectly well, and look, the Supreme Court overturned my felony, but it took him 3 years to do it. It took him 3 years to do it. They're out there busting their ass to try to keep illegal terrorists in this country. Okay? There's only one rationale for it, and it's that they are deliberately in on it. And I'm telling you this, and we've talked about this before. Fuck me. I was trying to be smooth. I missed. I've had like 2 sips of wine. Look at that. Look at that fucking clown stuff right there. All right. There are only 2 justices on the Supreme Court that are not compromised, in on it, or being intimidated. Who are those 2 justices? It's obvious, right? They're the same 2 justices who wanted to see the 2020 election case and were denied it by Roberts. And that's Alito and Thomas. Scalia was also one of them, but they killed Scalia. Alito and Thomas are the only 2 judges that are putting the country above legal procedure and are trying to maintain some kind of constitutionality. Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, I don't know the deal with Gorsuch. Kavanaugh's a pussy. So I don't know whether he's actively controlled or just intimidated. Very easy person to intimidate, by all accounts. You can look at him, you can see he doesn't have much of a backbone. Hate to say it. Amy Coney Barrett, probably some combination of being a cunt and being intimidated. I don't like these people. The American people don't like these people. We are in a crisis. And you look at this stuff. Look at what I have here on the screen. Chief Justice John Roberts tied to Colored Revolution mastermind Norm Eisen. So Norm Eisen is inoperative, And you can see here he's been trying to block a lot of the reforms that Trump's been doing. He's backed color revolutions, and Roberts met with him. Roberts is also on the Council of Foreign Relations, right? Roberts is also in a secret society with Boasberg. And he placed Boasberg, the person who was initially trying to stop a lot of Trump's, agenda with the migrants, on the FISA court that rubber stamped illegal spy warrants against Donald Trump. So these people are all in a club together. They're all in a club together. And I'll tell you this. Well, let me throw one more up here first. Not that we were ever, Robert, some people maybe, oh, well, he's technically a Republican. Doesn't matter. Globalist in the club. Ketanji Brown Jackson is saying outright she's trying to sabotage Trump's Article 2 powers. And again, let's make this clear. Constitutionally speaking, the Supreme Court has no ability to infringe on Article 2 powers. Supreme Court is supposed to be equal to the other branches, co-equal branch. It does not get to infringe on the enumerated rights of the other branches, which is Article 2 powers. And people rightly make these, comments about it, which is that, so are the courts involved in military preparations? Because they've totally strayed into it. And this is what I mean. Like, we can't take it seriously. Now, I understand why Trump is doing what he's doing. I understand why he's doing what he's doing. And why wouldn't he be doing what he's doing? For people who don't see the bigger picture here, I'm going to lay out the bigger picture. There are going to be mass arrests. Okay, this is not me being a Q-tard. If I wasn't a Q-tard, I could see it. I had some people say to me still that, well, nothing's going to happen. They tried to kill Trump twice. They tried to put him in prison for like 100 years. That world, I said this before in the last show, that world's gone, guys. It's gone. This is a fight to the finish. If Trump doesn't cross the Rubicon and clean house, he's toast. He's not toast just like his legacy's toast, just like the country's toast. He's toast. His family's toast. His cabinet's toast. We are toast. He knows that. Okay? If he knows it, then why are you worried he's not going to do it? There's a process to this. It makes a lot more sense. To go through and exhaust every option possible legally. And it's not to say that what he's going to do is illegal, but like optics wise, to go through the system until the system reveals itself. He will suspend habeas corpus. I don't know if this is going to be the mechanism, but maybe he will sign the Insurrection Act. He will do all these things. There will be mass arrests of people. James Comey is being arrested for threatening to kill Trump, former FBI director. That is where we are at. Okay, we're in the beginning stages of this. People saying it's not going to happen. It's not. This isn't like wishful thinking stuff now. Lines have been crossed. When somebody is constantly trying to kill you and your family, let's take this out of politics. You're just in your neighborhood and someone's constantly trying to kill you and your family. They're dedicated to it. You're just gonna let them get a gun? You're just gonna let them go and kill you because it's like, well, I got to operate within the norms. That's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. People got to get this in their head. It's obvious that there's going to be mass arrest. The question is the timing. I think the timing is coming. I really think it's going to be by this fall. We're going to see a buildup throughout the summer, but I see it coming by this fall. The midterms don't matter. Because a lot of people in Congress are going to be arrested too. They don't matter. This entire political system is falling apart. The question only is, how will Trump reconstruct it when it's over, because we know it's all broken. But where is it going to go? And we'll save that conversation for another show, because I don't, there's a lot to talk about with it. But if we look at what's in front of us, there's no question he's moving there. And you can tell that the rest of the world is looking at him in this way. I want to just, before we move on to the rest of the world, I want to show two more things here. So Ed Martin, the guy that Tom Tillis and Congress blocked, right, from being able to get into the position as head DC attorney. Doesn't matter. He's going to be run the weaponization of government. Ed Martin's a great guy, big J6 supporter. He actually was a J6 lawyer. So they're going to go into the pipe bomb stuff, and they're going to reveal the entire setup on January 6th. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, and that's going to unlock what happened in the 2020 election. You see right here what Trump said today. Whoever had control of the auto pen is looking to be a bigger and bigger scandal by the moment. So I'm not going to read through all of Trump's little rant here, but the point of this is that we are going to see in the public is going to see that the entire Biden White House, that Biden wasn't writing anything, that it was completely run by the deep state, that the election was stolen, that January 6th was set up. This stuff is going to be put out there in the open, and there's going to be arrest. I don't give a fuck what the courts say, and the public's not going to give a fuck what the courts say when we see that the courts are engaged in it. This is the point. No one cares what they have to say at the end of the day, because if someone's saying, well, the rules say I have to be able to kill you. That's what the rules say. Hey, you got to follow the rules. I get to kill you. That's the rules. You're not going to follow those fucking rules. And that's what the court's at right now. That's at the stage that we've reached. Every single judge that isn't livid about what is happening in the U.S. is there to abuse justice, not enforce it. I guarantee there's enough evidence to arrest thousands of them, and it has to happen ASAP. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. ASAP is, does that mean tomorrow? I don't think that we're going to get the mass arrest tomorrow. I think we're going to let this trickle out. We're going to let them continue to escalate, because they're the ones who are escalating. To some extent, you can argue that they are baiting Trump into arresting them on their terms in hopes that the public will respond against Trump. They've been trying to say Trump's going to be a fascist, Trump's going to be a dictator, but they're actually asking for that. They're creating an environment where it's necessary for Trump to actually go and do all these arrests. So, but they're going to try to play with public perception. I really don't think it's working, to be honest. I don't think it's working. But if Trump was impatient about this, then it very well might be a problem. This could work. But as it is right now, they just keep outing themselves. Trump is making them own the stupidest issues. So I want to talk about this, though, with the foreign policy stuff, because if you have any doubt about what's going on, you need to look at Trump's Middle Eastern tour here. I mean, what he was able to accomplish in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and Qatar is arguably the most impressive and the most significant foreign policy summit, at least since the end of the Cold War. It could go even further back than that. Like, this is a total shifting. And BAP is all upset. I love BAP, by the way, but BAP is upset. Bronze Age pervert is upset that, you have all this rhetoric of Trump pivoting to the Middle East and Asia away from Europe. I think BAP, first off, is very, he's European, right? And he has a very strong soft spot for the history of Europe, as do I, right? And look, let's not take this too seriously, because Europe is going to continue to be a partner of the US in the long term and in the midterm, frankly. In the short term, this decoupling has to happen because Europe has to go through a lot of pain. I don't think BAP wants to see this, that Europe needs to be broken. The elite in Europe needs to be broken because the elite in Europe is the root of this cabal. So we have to break this globalist elite. And to do that means Europe is going to have to suffer in the short term and be humiliated in the short term. It's not a long-term thing like Europe's gone long-term. And maybe he's referring to certain people on the right who think that. I certainly don't think that. I mean, Europe will be fine once it gets the bad leadership off of its back. That's really the only problem with it. Once Western countries are able to appropriately care about their culture and their people, then you're going to see changes in the birth rate, and you're going to see changes in the politics and the economics and all that stuff. But to go over this stuff in the Middle East, Trump has now received control over Syrian oil mineral rights, $600 billion economic cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia, $200 billion deal to sell Boeing aircraft to Qatar, $1.2 trillion comprehensive economic cooperation agreement with Qatar. That's not including private investments. These are just the big figure numbers. A lot of private investments from individual sheikhs in the United States. And then we have Iran is ready for a nuclear deal, agree to stop making nuclear weapons. Now, where did this political coup come from? It came from Israel being stupid. And we're at this point here. Again, I'm gonna reiterate this. I got no beef with Israelis. I 100% respect the right of Israel to exist. Not cucking for these guys or anything like that, but just saying, like, I support civilization. Israel's an advanced country, and I don't personally care about the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I understand why both sides hate each other. Let's leave it at that. But I've always had an issue with Israeli control over American policy. Netanyahu has jumped the Shark Tank with all the stuff with Mike Waltz. I won't repeat it. We talked about it last show. It's getting to be older news. But the bottom line is it's worth noting that all this major political shifts, these agreements that Trump has been making with all these Middle Eastern countries have come on the heels of Netanyahu overplaying his hand. So if this is one of the most impressive and important pivots, Trump going to the Middle East and saying, we're sorry we kept blowing up your countries and doing regime change. I mean, this is huge, right? And they were treating him like a king, like literally the king of the world. It was the biggest greeting I have ever seen in my life for a world leader, and not from some podunk country, from the entire region, all of them doing everything they possibly could to honor Trump. Big things are happening, guys. Big things are happening. The bad guys are getting outrooted. So if you think for a second that, oh, Trump's got to watch out because of the midterms, Trump's got to watch out because the judges said this, get the fuck out of here with that stuff. Get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. These are speed bumps, and really all they're designed to do is to force this opponent, this group, to play every card, because they want to play the entire game out. Trump's going to make them play every single one of their cards. He's going to make them do stupid stuff so they lose their credibility. You want to play the next hand? Okay, you're going to lose on that hand, but play it. Okay, we'll play the next hand, lose on that. I'm going to keep making you play your hands so you got no cards left. That's what's going on. That's all it is. But Trump's not losing. Don't take this stuff seriously. Trump has real power. They don't have real power. They have the ability to do damage. They don't have real power. So the Mideast trip stuff is huge, and it's making major impact domestically. I'm not sure if I mentioned last show, but obviously you have the big pharmaceutical changes, price changes that Trump's made. He's taken all the best issues, all the Middle East peace, everything. Where's the left? All these things that they try to criticize Trump for, like it's over. It's so over. So this is really where we're headed, guys. The last big topic I want to talk about, and if you guys have any questions, anything you want to cover, drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat, because we're not going to go a full hour here. 15 minutes tops. I want to cover one more thing today, but I'll answer any other questions you guys have. By the way, I'm in Poland. I'm in Poland right now. So not too far from the Ukrainian border as it is, which is what we're going to talk about next. So there have been some talks in Istanbul, talks about a ceasefire, and the Russians, understandably, because they have the strategic advantage across the entire front, have said, okay, if you really want a ceasefire, you have to pull back to the borders of the 4 territories we annexed. Now, look, Russia knows that Ukraine's not going to do this. They know they're not going to do it. But anything besides for this in Russia's defense is not a tenable option, because all those 4 provinces, those 4 oblasts, are in Russia's constitution as being part of Russia. So from Russia's perspective, we're not going to do a ceasefire until you withdraw from our territory. So that's about half the territory, maybe a third. I don't know the exact proportions at this point. Let's say 40% of that territory is still under Ukrainian control. So if Ukraine actually did pull back to the borders of those oblasts, then it would be a clear sign that Ukraine actually wants peace. And I really think that would be the end of the war. But we know they're not going to do that. Ukraine right now, this is how fucking retarded Ukraine is. Ukraine is talking about how, Zelensky, right? How they might be willing to concede that Crimea is Russian. Like, oh yeah, we're going to concede. It's like, that's like saying, like, we're going to concede that, the sky's blue. Like, we're going to concede that trees are green in the springtime. We're going to concede, like, no one gives a fuck about you conceding an established reality that's been a reality for over a decade. Like, people are nuts. Absolutely nuts. So, but Russia can't, for its own benefit, they can't just give a ceasefire for no reason without any, they have the advantage. Why would they give a ceasefire, allow Ukraine to regroup, re-entrench? It's not going to happen. So, but this is what's interesting. So I've been following this since the last few months, and I've been hearing, because I'll be honest, hearing this from a Russian perspective, the 4 oblasts are like an absolute minimum. I mean, let's be honest here. Like, Russia has fought a serious war. It's been fighting a serious war. Great recruitment. I mean, Ukraine's grabbing people off the streets. Russia is entire volunteer military, and I think that they get about 30,000 recruits every month. It's pretty good. It's pretty good numbers. But how is, like, the Russian people now, like, we're talking, I don't know the figures. I haven't checked the figures since before I went into prison. But let's just say, because I think it's fair to say that Russia has sustained 1 million casualties. I'm not saying 1 million dead, but 1 million casualties. Maybe 500,000 dead and seriously wounded, like permanently damaged, right? I think those are reasonable numbers. Exact figures, if you guys have them, you can drop them. But the bottom line is, Russia suffered a lot in this war. They've committed a lot. It's cost them their economy a lot. It's cost them lives. So you're not going to, like, the more that a country suffers in a war, the more it's going to take. Stalin was very aggressive with the territory he took in Eastern Europe. Russia lost 20, 30 million people. So if Russia lost 20, 30 million people, 40 million by some estimates, if including civilians, they lost like 20% of their population. I mean, it was like insane numbers of people. So they took what they took, and they did what they wanted to do. I mean, I am no supporter of Stalin. The only thing that Stalin did that was right, which was hard, it was very rough at the time, but when he made his countries, he made sure that they were all ethnically homogenous. He displaced the minorities from, when you had one group in one country, one group in another, little smatterings of it. He took all the Germans across Central and Eastern Europe and he put them in Germany. He took all the Poles out of Ukraine and Belarus and he put them in Poland. He took all the Germans out of Eastern Poland and he put them in Western, out of the eastern parts of Germany when he gave that land to Poland. Like he moved the countries around so that he moved people around. Like, I want the country to be this. I want this country to be this. He did that. It actually has been a huge undervalued part of the stability of Eastern Europe. Because it wasn't like that before for Poland and other countries. Aside from that, and that was a terrible thing. You did displace people's lives, but maybe it pulled the Band-Aid off. I don't know. I'm not here to litigate that. But the point I'm trying to make is that the more you suffer in a war, the more you are able to ask for, the more you will inevitably ask for. And this is part of the reason also why Ukraine is not going to surrender, because Ukraine has lost, 3 times as much as Russia, and they had a lot less to lose. So as Ukraine suffers more, they're more and more unwilling to come to the table. It makes sense psychologically from some perspective, which is why this war is going to get fought to the finish. So this is my little monologue about it. This is what Russia said, because I've been saying all this stuff because those 4 oblasts are not even really satisfactory to most Russians. Like when I've talked to Russians, I have some friends in the States who are Russian. They consider it like a weak move to get just those oblasts. They're like, all this for that. They want at least Odessa. Odessa, famous Russian city, made by the Russians under Catherine the Great. And I think that there's many Russians who even want Kiev, because Kiev is where the Kievan Rus came from, the first really true Slavic state. Not the origins of Ukraine, it was the origins of the Eastern Slavs in general, really. And it branched off and fragmented and stuff. But Kiev is an important city. It's an important city geographically. Dnieper River is a very important city geographically. Odessa is an important city geographically and historically. They're both important places. I think that you can make arguments that when you go west of Kiev, it becomes less important. You start to get more of just a historical value for it. But full control of the Dnieper River and Odessa, the Black Sea, is important. So this is what happened. Story has been making rounds that Ukrainians were outraged when Russian negotiators said that Ukrainian soldiers must leave the 4 new Russian regions as part of the ceasefire, to which Moscow delegation replied, "Next time it will be 5. Now a reporter in Istanbul got to ask the Russian side how it really went down. "We didn't say 5, we said 8. And it's interesting. When I heard this first, because I heard that it will be 5, and I'm like, that's rhetorically good, but it doesn't make sense. Because which is the 5th one that they're going to take? This makes more sense right here. So I did this for you guys to help with the geography. I know all these regions because I've studied this map so much. But when I've talked about these things before, I think most of you don't know what I'm referring to, because you have not been map obsessed like I am. So Crimea in red obviously has long been Russian since 2014. So these 4 regions in the bottom right, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, those are the 4 regions that Russia has said are to be annexed, right? That they're part of it. And you can see in all of these different locations, you can see with Kherson, most of it, but not all of it. You see that little inlet in Kherson, that's the Dnieper River. So not all of Kherson, including the city, is across the river, right? A lot of these provinces are not entirely taken by Russia. None of them are entirely taken. So Ukraine would have to pull back from all of those. These next 4 provinces are almost certainly the next 4 on the list. Odessa, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkov. Now, if Russia were to take those 8 regions, it will have taken all of Novorossiya back, and it will, at that point, have the preponderance of the most pro-Russian population in Ukraine. This is probably for them like I would say maxing out benefits with the least amount of complications, because I think, look, a lot of people from these provinces have died in the war and whatnot, but I think that you're least likely to face insurgency issues from these provinces, even with like changes from the war consciousness, etc. And you geopolitically, you get total control of the Black Sea, and control of Odessa also means if you go to the farthest southwestern part of that Odessa Oblast, you get the Danube River. So Russia then also gets some degree of control over the Danube River, which controls all of Central European output into the Black Sea. So it's significant. But I want to talk about beyond this. What are the bigger plans? Because I personally think everything you see in purple going to Russia is more or less a foregone conclusion. Because this is like, these negotiations, I think, are Russia's last straw with it. After this, they're saying, we're taking whatever we want, and you can't do anything about it. So I'm going to address some of these things, Tim. So this seems strange to me because Odessa is historically separate from Russia, while Kiev is historically Russian. That is not correct, Tim. That is not correct. Odessa, everything on the Black Sea, was part of, by the late 1700s, it was basically an Ottoman protectorate. This was part of the remnants of the Golden Horde, the Tatars. So it was only really controlled by nomadic tribes. So everything around Kiev, that was called Little Russia. And everything in the far west by Lviv, that was Galicia, and that was under the control of Poland and later Austria-Hungary. I can get into that stuff, but everything on the Black Sea coast down here, these areas were not, they were unsettled. They were basically virgin lands, kind of like the lands in northern Kazakhstan. There was a big thing after Catherine the Great won them. This was like General Surovov, right? He won these big campaigns against the Ottomans, annexed this territory to Russia, and they called it Novorossiya. And they made cities. Catherine the Great made cities on the coast, and they were named after the Greeks. So Odessa, these were Greek names, a lot of these places. And I forget the name of the one, Mariupol, right? Where that had that big battle in Donetsk, which is on the Sea of Azov. That is on the Black Sea coast too. That city was in Odessa. Actually, they brought Greeks in, who were Orthodox. But Odessa has always been a Russian city. Now, Kiev is this mixed thing because it's the center, you could say, of the original Slavic civilization, the Kievan Rus. But there has been, even under the Russian Empire, they were still very pro-Russian, but they had that separate Malo-Russian, that little, like the little Russian mentality. When the Ukrainian nationalism began in Lviv, right? They claimed Kiev. You can basically divide this into, you have the Novorossiya region in purple, and then you have this central area of Kiev, maybe Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia East, which was like Little Russia. And then you have west of that, which is like the Volyn and Galicia. And then you have Transcarpathia, which is its own thing. So these are different entities. The Russian Empire, broadly speaking, controlled everything except for the 5 provinces in the far southwest. So Transcarpathia was part of Hungary. Lviv, Ivano-Frankish, which was used to be called Stanislavov, and Ternopil. With the exception of the very northeastern part of Ternopil, that was all part of, Austria-Hungary. And the three cities there had very strong, high Polish populations called Eastern Galicia. Chernovisti was part of Romania. Everything else, Volyn, Rivne, Helmenetsky, East, that was all part of the Russian Empire, along with Belarus. So the question is what happens here? I think it's a foregone conclusion everything in purple goes to Russia. The question is what happens after that. And I think that there's two broad possibilities. If you are going to see Poland, Romania, and Hungary get parts of Ukraine, you'll see all of Transcarpathia go to Hungary. Now, I think right now only the very southern part of Transcarpathia would go to Hungary because that's the most Hungarian ethnically at the moment, even though it was all historically Hungarian. Chernovisti would go to Romania. And I think that Poland would certainly get Lviv. It might get all of East Galicia, so it might get Tarnopol, Ivano-Frankish, and Lviv. And I think in its biggest extension, it might get Volyn, Rivne, and maybe Helmenitsky, which are, Volyn, Rivne, Tarnopol, Ivano-Frankish, Lviv were all part of the Second Polish Republic. So they all used to be Polish territories, and there used to be Poles there before they were deported to the former German territories, which is now Western Poland. So I don't know what Russia wants to do. Does Russia, if Russia wants to get rid of Ukraine, then I think that they annex everything Kiev, Cherkasy, Kivarad east. Because you certainly want to get Kiev and you want to get everything east of the Dnieper River. They might take Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia. I don't think if Russia's goal is annexing Ukraine outright, that they are going to take more than that. I also don't know, though, maybe they want to leave this area and create a separate puppet Ukraine that's like a Belarus that they control. And then you get into the question of how far west do they want to go? Because if Galicia is controlled by them, is Galicia just going to be a problem? I don't know what they're going to do with this. I don't know. Tim also said right here, Ukraine as a national identity doesn't have a future. It's about whether they become part of Russia or the EU. Becoming part of Russia is way more realistic. If you want to look at astrologically speaking, Russia is definitely on the ascendant. Russia's going to expand. We know that. I don't know exactly how this is going to play out. None of us do, what that looks like. But Russia's coming back together. I don't know if Ukrainian identity is going to die. I mean, the fact that they fought so much for a war makes me, even though I kind of wish it would die, I'm not sure that it's actually going to die. So I don't know, for instance, if it makes sense that you have a Ukrainian state. You give like the southern part of Transcarpathia to Hungary, and then everything from Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia west, you make into a Ukrainian state, which is going to be a piece of shit, basically. I mean, it's not going to have a lot of natural resources. It's going to be about 10 million people. And Russia takes everything from Kiev east, as well as everything in purple on this map. I think from a perspective of straight out annexation, it's hard. That's the best. Like if you're doing straight out annexation, that's the best cost benefits for Russia. They don't really gain anything taking Zhytomyr, Vinnytsia, certainly more than that. They don't really gain anything from it, just really hostile populations. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but things are definitely changing, and it's possible Ukrainian identity will collapse, at least as an independent nation, once everything comes out about what was actually funding Ukrainian identity, what it was all about. In that case, Tim, I could agree it could disappear. So I don't know. I mean, look, Lviv is the last thing I'll say, because I know that this is a very this is for the people, you know, I saved this for the end because a lot of people are not going to want to necessarily have this history lesson, but I know some of you guys like this. So I wanted to save it for the end. Less polemic, exciting stuff. Lviv, though, was a very, very Polish city. It was like 80%, 75, 80% Polish before they deported all the people. So it's, you know, if you look at a map, you could very easily include Lviv in Poland and it wouldn't be a big deal. You could maybe even have it stomach all of East Galicia. And that would historically, I think, be the fairest thing. But, you know, I can tell you, talking to my wife, like most Polish people don't want this. They actually don't want it because they don't want to deal with the Ukrainians. You know what I mean? And that's why I kind of wonder, like, the radical Ukrainian nationalism comes from Lviv. So maybe just give them a little podunk, like Belarus-like state. Let them have it. Give the Hungarians back at least the southern part of Transcarpathia, where there's mostly Hungarians, and let Russia take everything from Kiev to the east. But I feel like if there is going to be a Ukrainian state, it either has to, like, Lviv or Kiev has to exist. One of the two has to be in Ukrainian control. I don't think they both do. But if one of them is not in their control, then there's no Ukrainian state. And Kiev is clearly the one that can be Russified, and Lviv is maybe the one that can be Polonized, but Lviv can't be Russified and Kiev can't be Polonized. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going to happen with it. You know, I at this point I've even started to think, like, just give them that small little state, and you know, it can be a little bit of a buffer of sorts. But we'll see what happens, guys. We will see what happens. Anyway, big things occurring, and look, it's going to be all right. This is the beginning of a new era, a very good era, but it's going to be different. And just don't have this. My only recommendation is just don't feel so tied down to the past. We need to be willing to just do things if those things are the right answer for the future. So, all right, I'll see you guys.